Welcome to the Hot News Channel, where we strip away the noise to analyze today's breaking stories. It is January 22nd, 2026.
And if you are marking your calendar, and, frankly, you probably should be, you might want to circle today in red ink.
A bold start.
Well, we cover a lot of news cycles on this show, but when you look at the slate of stories that are breaking just this morning, I think historians might well look back at this Thursday as the definitive end of the post-World War II international order.
Okay, that is a massive claim to kick us off with. You're seriously saying we are looking at the end of the Westphalian system, the whole concept of sovereignty as we've known it for, centuries?
I don't say it lightly. I really don't. The Westphalian system, you see, was built on this one core idea that national borders are sacred.
Right.
You don't just buy a chunk of another country. You don't just liquidate a territory for a real estate development. But when you look at the pivot point we are standing on right now, those old rules they simply do not apply.
So what are we seeing instead?
We are seeing a hard transition from what we used to call a rules-based order, which, let's be honest, was always a bit shaky.
A bit of an aspiration, maybe?
An aspiration, exactly. A good word for it. We're moving from that to an explicitly transactional order.
Meaning sovereignty isn't a right anymore, it's a commodity.
Precisely. In 2026, sovereignty is an asset class. Full stop. It can be bought, it can be sold, it can be traded, or, leveraged by superpowers. And we are seeing that specific mechanism unveil itself in three distinct, massive stories today.
All in the same day.
All hitting at once. We have the simultaneous unveiling of the Board of Peace in Davos. We have the so-called infinite deal for Greenland. Okay. And we have the liquidation, and I use that word very deliberately, the liquidation and reconstruction of Gaza.
Okay, let's unpack this because there is so much to get through, and the implications are, frankly, staggering. So we've got the infinite deal for Greenland, which sounds like something out of a science fiction novel.
It really does.
Then we have a billionaire-funded liquidation plan for Gaza. And set against all that, we have the freezing cold reality of the Ukraine front, which stands in, such stark contrast to all the champagne being sipped in Davos.
It is a trifecta of stories. And together, they tell us exactly how the world works in 2026. It's no longer about ideology. It's about the deal.
Let's jump right into the story that had the markets rattling yesterday and has everyone talking today. The Greenland infinite deal.
The game changer.
Right. So, to set the scene for anyone who missed the overnight alerts, the breaking news is that President Trump has officially backed down from his threat.
A huge threat.
A huge one. He was threatening to either invade Greenland or impose those crippling 10% tariffs on all European allies. And you have to remember, those tariffs were scheduled to hit on February 1st. That was a gun pointed directly at the European economy.
It absolutely was. And everyone in Brussels, in Berlin, they were holding their breath. But the pivot, the change, it came after a closed-door meeting between President Trump and the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
And they emerged with what reports from Axios and The Telegraph are calling a framework deal. But Trump, he used this very specific, very strange phrase. He called it an infinite deal.
An infinite deal.
With no time limit.
And that phrasing is so intentional. Infinite. It suggests a kind of permanence that goes far, far beyond a standard treaty or, say, a lease with a 99-year expiration date. This is designed to be forever.
So let's get into the specifics because the details are just wild. Under this new agreement, the U.S. gains sovereign rights, and that's the key phrase over specific pockets of land inside Greenland to establish bases.
Okay, so not a lease, sovereign rights.
Exactly. We also get exclusive U.S. access to strategic mineral rights, which is just huge for the tech sector, for green energy, everything. And on top of that, the deployment of the U.S. Golden Dome missile defense system right on Greenlandic soil.
But the devil is absolutely in that phrase, sovereign rights. And this is where we have to stop and really look at the justification they're using because it's fascinating. Both Rutte and Trump are citing something called the Cyprus model.
The Cyprus model. I think for a lot of our listeners, that probably just brings to mind a holiday destination. Can you break down the geopolitical mechanism there? What does that actually mean?
It's crucial to understand this. So when Cyprus gained independence from Britain back in 1960, the UK didn't just pack up and leave everything behind.
Okay.
They retained what are called sovereign base areas, specifically two areas, Akrotiri and Dhekelia. Now, these are not just leased lands like, say, Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. They are, for all intents and purposes, British overseas territories.
So British soil.
It is British soil in the middle of a Mediterranean island. The laws of Cyprus generally don't apply there. It's a little piece of the UK abroad.
So effectively, the U.S. and NATO are applying this almost colonial era logic to the Arctic in 2026.
That's the argument they're making, yes. By using the Cyprus model, they are literally carving out holes in the map of Greenland that will essentially belong to Washington, D.C., not to Nuuk or Copenhagen. It fundamentally fractures the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark.
It slices Greenland up into zones of control.
It does. It absolutely does. This represents a transfer of sovereignty, not a rental agreement. And the person who negotiated this, Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, he is the really, really interesting player here.
That's the part that is just blowing my mind. Because Mark Rutte is being hailed in some corners on Wall Street, certainly, as the Trump whisperer. The narrative that's being pushed is that he single-handedly prevented a trade war and, maybe even the total collapse of NATO by cutting this deal.
Right. But think about the transaction. He saved the alliance by sacrificing the sovereign territory of one of its own members. That's the trade.
But here is the kicker, and this is what makes it so extraordinary. Denmark was not in the room.
No, they were not. And that is the breach of protocol, the broken norm that signals this new order we're talking about.
We have direct reports that the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, and Greenlandic officials have stated on the record they were not consulted at all.
Not at all.
And, the Danish reaction has been consistent for years on this. Sovereignty is not up for negotiation. And yet, this deal was announced over their heads by the head of their own military alliance and the U.S. president.
It's the ultimate humiliation for a sovereign state. I mean, just think about the implications for a moment. You have NATO, an organization that was designed to protect the territorial integrity of its members.
That's its whole reason for being.
Its entire purpose.
Yeah.
And it is now actively negotiating the giveaway of that very territory to the dominant superpower in the alliance. It turns the entire concept on its head.
And Trump, he didn't exactly try to soften the blow, did he? He's standing there right next to Rutte, speaking to the press, and he says, and this is a direct quote, "I'm discussing the whole Greenland thing with this man right here. He is frankly more important."
More important. That one phrase tells you everything you need to know about the hierarchy of this new order.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the Prime Minister of Denmark thinks. It matters what the deal makers at the top decide. If you aren't the superpower or you aren't the broker of the deal, then you're just the real estate being traded. You're the commodity.
And of course, you knew this was coming. Vladimir Putin couldn't resist weighing in on this whole situation.
Oh, the trolling was top tier. It was calculated precision designed to inflict maximum damage.
So according to reporting from Reuters, Putin commented that if you benchmark the price against the Alaska purchase, which was, back in 1867,
Right.
and you adjust for today's gold prices, the U.S. could probably afford Greenland for about $1 billion.
He's literally doing the math for them, just rubbing it in.
But then he added the sting, the real poison dart. He remarked that Denmark has always treated Greenland as a colony anyway.
Which is such a classic Putin move.
Yo.
He's taking an accurate historical grievance, Greenland's long and complicated colonial status, the real tensions that exist between Nuuk and Copenhagen, and he's using it to drive a wedge right between the Western allies.
He's basically saying, you criticize me for land grabs in Ukraine.
You're doing the exact same thing in the Arctic, just with a contract instead of a tank. It's a way of creating a moral equivalence. It validates the entire thesis that sovereignty now just has a price tag on it. If you have the leverage, you can buy the land.
And if you don't have the leverage, you lose it. Simple as that. And speaking of, buying into the New World Order, let's pivot from the Arctic to the Alps. Because while the Greenland deal was being hammered out in private, the Board of Peace was officially inaugurated in public at Davos.
This might be the most surreal story of the year so far. The Board of Peace. It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel or maybe a satire of the United Nations.
Or a Marvel movie villains organization. It definitely has that ring to it.
It does. It really does.
It was launched today at the World Economic Forum. And the structure is, it's unique. Donald Trump is named Chairman for Life.
And we have to pause on that title. Chairman for Life. Not president, not a rotating chair, not Secretary General.
No term limits.
For life. That creates a monarchy of diplomacy. It is personal, it is permanent, and it's tied to one man.
And the barrier to entry is pretty steep. Permanent seats on this new board cost a $1 billion entry fee.
A pay-to-play diplomatic corps. It explicitly monetizes influence and access. It's no longer about, your population size or your GDP or your commitment to human rights. It's about whether you can write the check.
And the visual branding observers like Mullen Baker pointed this out immediately. The logo looks strikingly similar to the UN logo, the olive branches and the globe.
But it's slathered in gold paint.
Slathered in gold paint.
Which is just perfect visual storytelling. It tells you exactly what this institution is supposed to be. It's the UN, but monetized. It's the UN, but privatized. It removes the entire pretense of equality among nations and replaces it with a shareholder model. Your influence is directly proportional to your investment.
Let's look at the membership list, because this is where the new geopolitical alignment becomes crystal clear. We have the list of signatories found in the charter. It includes Bahrain, Morocco, Hungary, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Belarus, and Kosovo.
Do you notice a pattern there? Is anything jumping out at you?
Well, I see a lot of autocracies, a lot of monarchies, a few strongman democracies in the mix.
Exactly. It is a coalition of transactional states. Yeah. These are leaders who understand deals, not declarations. You don't see France on that list. You don't see the UK or Germany. The major Western democracies, they all declined to join.
So this is effectively Trump's competitor to the UN.
It is. It's built for leaders who prefer a handshake deal in a private room over a lengthy human rights resolution in the General Assembly.
And Trump wasn't shy about that dynamic at all. He was quoted saying, "We can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations."
And that phrase, in conjunction with, in this context, really means over and above. The clear implication is that the UN becomes the debating society for the poor countries, the place where people go to complain.
Right.
While the Board of Peace becomes the boardroom where the rich countries, the shareholders, decide the actual fate of the world.
The former Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, he didn't mince his words on this. He called it a despicable development. He argues it completely and totally commercializes peacekeeping.
Well, it does, but that's the feature, not a bug. That's the entire point of the organization. If you pay your billion, you get protection. You get a seat at the table. You get a direct line to the chairman. If you don't pay, you're on the menu. It transforms collective security from a universal right into a subscription service.
But there was one invitee that really shook things up. Vladimir Putin was invited.
Yes. And let's be clear. The leader of a nation currently under massive, sweeping Western sanctions was invited to join the Board of Peace.
And the twist, this is according to Reuters and also Russian state readouts, is that Putin accepted the concept. He said yes. But here is the kicker. He offered to pay the $1 billion entry fee using Russian sovereign assets that are currently frozen by the West.
It is a stroke of geopolitical genius. Regardless of what you think of the man or his actions, as a strategic move, it's brilliant. It's a trap.
Okay, explain that mechanism for us. Why is paying with frozen assets such a clever trap?
Because the West has frozen roughly $300 billion of Russian central bank assets.
Right.
And we've been debating for years now whether to seize that money and give it to Ukraine for reconstruction.
It's been a huge point of contention.
A huge legal and political minefield. So by offering to use that specific money to pay Trump's entry fee, Putin forces the United States into an impossible bind.
Okay.
If Trump accepts the payment, he is implicitly acknowledging that those frozen funds are indeed Russian money that can be used for Russian purposes. It tacitly legitimizes Russia's claim to those assets and completely breaks the united front of the sanctions regime.
So if they take the money, they effectively admit they can't actually seize it for Ukraine down the line.
Exactly. And if Trump refuses the money, then he's turning down $1 billion for his shiny new project. And more importantly, he's rejecting a so-called peace overture from Russia.
So he looks like he's the one who doesn't want peace.
Precisely. It's a poison pill wrapped in $1 billion check. It forces the transactional order to turn on itself and eat itself. It's an absolutely brilliant, cynical move.
So we have the Arctic being sold off, we have global diplomacy being privatized, and now we move to the Middle East, where the very concept of reconstruction is taking a very dark, very high-tech, and very profitable turn.
This is, for me, perhaps the most disturbing pillar of the three. Because while Greenland is about land and Davos is about money, what is happening with the new plan for Gaza is about the erasure of a people to make way for a product.
We are talking about the liquidation of Gaza, that's the phrase being used. And today at Davos, Jared Kushner presented what he calls the Gaza Master Plan.
And the language he used was, chilling is really the only word for it.
He didn't use this phrase, but analysts looking at the renderings, they're calling it dystopian Dubai. His vision is for a high-tech, luxury waterfront real estate development, But the quote that stuck with me, the one that really made my jaw drop, was Kushner saying, and I quote, "Let's just plan for catastrophic success."
Catastrophic success. It's an oxymoron that just betrays the entire reality of the situation. The catastrophe is the current state of Gaza, the rubble, the displacement, the death toll. The success is the real estate value that can be extracted from that destruction. He is viewing the obliteration of the Strip not as a human tragedy, but as a site-clearing operation for a new development.
And he claims it can be built in 2 to 3 years. And his reason why? Because, and this is another direct quote, "We've already started removing the rubble."
Just think about what that means. He is talking about the ongoing military operations, the bombing campaigns, as if they are simply the demolition phase of a construction project. It's beyond cynical.
And then there's the no plan B reality. Kushner stated this explicitly on stage. "We do not have a plan B."
Which means there is no alternative scenario where this doesn't happen. It signals that the train has left the station. The decision has been made.
But here's what was so glaringly missing from the entire presentation. Palestinians.
Not one. Zero.
There was a total absence of Palestinians in the presentation. No mention of the Palestinian Authority. No mention of Hamas consent, obviously. The only word used was demilitarization.
And this effectively confirms the worst fears of analysts who have been watching this unfold for the last 2 years. It is a plan that requires the population to be, well, elsewhere, or at least invisible and contained.
Yeah.
You cannot build a luxury waterfront resort in the middle of a refugee crisis. So the crisis itself has to be moved.
And where is that population going? This is where it gets even darker. We have reports from Drop Site News and Forensic Architecture that are analyzing satellite imagery as we speak. And they show Israel leveling a strategic area near Rafah for what they're branding a humanitarian city.
But humanitarian city is branding term. It's a euphemism. The analysts who are looking at the plans, the satellite photos, they fear this is, and I'm quoting their analysis, a concentration camp within a concentration camp.
A concentration camp inside a concentration camp. Can you explain the geography of that? What does that mean?
Well, Gaza is already, as we know, an enclosed territory, a blockade. What the imagery suggests is the construction of a smaller, tighter, even more controlled enclosure, a high-security zone to house the bulk of the population. This move clears the coast, which is the prime real estate, the land with the highest value for this master plan. It physically separates the people from the land value.
And who is funding this? Because this isn't just government money, is it? This is where private equity meets state power.
No, and this is where the tech dystopia angle comes in. This isn't just about pouring concrete, it's about writing code.
An analysis by the journalist Wally Rashid directly links the funding to Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle.
The fourth richest man in the world, a tech titan.
And the connection is this. Ellison pledged $350 million to the Tony Blair Institute. And Tony Blair, not so coincidentally, is on the Board of Peace.
You see how it all connects. The dots are right there. Tony Blair provides the diplomatic cover, the peace branding, the international legitimacy. Larry Ellison provides the capital. And Oracle.
Oracle provides this surveillance infrastructure.
Precisely. Oracle is essentially building the back end, the operating system for the new Gaza. So this isn't just reconstruction. It is a laboratory. It is a test bed for a biometric surveillance state, funded by American tech billionaires, legitimized by Western diplomats like Tony Blair, and executed on the ground by the IDF.
So Gaza becomes a prototype for a new kind of city.
Yes, that is the ultimate fear. If you can successfully control a hostile or displaced population using surveillance drones, biometric gates, and predictive algorithms in Gaza, you can then sell that security package to any autocrat on the Board of Peace.
That is a terrifying thought. So you're saying we have the Board of Peace as the global sales floor and Gaza as the product demo.
In a transactional world, everything is a product. Even population control, even ethnic cleansing, if you rebrand it as an urban development.
Which brings us to the one place where the transaction isn't going so smoothly. The one place where the deal is getting stuck in the mud, quite literally. The freezing cold reality of Ukraine.
The reality check. The place where hard power still trumps the deal.
At Davos, as you'd expect, they held a Ukraine breakfast. And the optimism in that room was palpable. General Keith Kellogg, who has been a key Trump advisor on this, he claimed that if Ukraine can just survive January and February, they will win in March and April.
That is, look, I respect the general service, but that assessment is wishful thinking bordering on delusion. especially if you look at the actual hard data coming from the ground.
Right. So let's strip away the optimism from the Davos breakfast and look at the hard data. Citing analysis from people like Glenn Deason and Alexander Mercouris, it paints a very, very different picture.
The disconnect between the rhetoric and the reality is staggering.
For instance, Mayor Klitschko in Kyiv reports that 600,000 residents fled the city in January alone.
Let's just sit with that number for a second. 600,000 in 1 month from the capital. That is a massive depopulation event. That isn't just people leaving for a holiday. That's people voting with their feet because the basic infrastructure of life is collapsing. The heat is off. The water is freezing. The power is intermittent, and they are getting out while they still can.
And the rhetoric coming out of the defense ministry in Kyiv is getting, frankly, desperate. The new defense minister, Umarov, stated a new goal for the army: kill 50,000 Russians a month.
And you have to analyze that metric. Kill 50,000 Russians a month. That is not a strategic objective like retake Crimea or liberate the Donbass. That is a body count metric. It's a metric of pure attrition.
It sounds like something from the Vietnam War.
It's exactly that. It's what you say when you have no maneuver capability left, when you can't take territory. It's a number designed for NATO consumption to show a return on investment for the weapons that are being sent. It's not a metric for military victory.
And the energy grid, you mentioned it, it's on the brink. We're hearing that nuclear substations are now being targeted.
And if those go, the lights go out for good. The entire industrial capacity of Ukraine effectively ceases to exist. It becomes a deindustrialized state.
Meanwhile, behind the scenes, there are secret negotiations happening. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, is reportedly in Moscow right now.
Negotiating directly with the Kremlin, bypassing Kyiv, bypassing Brussels.
The rumor mill is churning. Some reports suggest they are 90% of the way to a deal. But you sound skeptical.
I am extremely skeptical because the fundamental Russian position hasn't changed in 2 years. They insist that any deal must recognize the realities on the ground.
Meaning they keep the territory they have taken?
They keep what they have taken, and what they have taken is increasing by the day. The fall of the city of Pokrovsk and nearby Mirgorod is imminent, or may have already happened, according to some military sources, even if Western media is completely silent on it.
And why is Pokrovsk so important?
It's the central logistics hub for the entire front. If Pokrovsk falls, the supply lines for the remaining Ukrainian forces in the Donbass collapse. So Witkoff might be negotiating a deal in a warm office in Moscow, but the map is being redrawn on the battlefield in the snow. And in this new transactional order, the guy with the tanks on the ground usually has better leverage than the guy with the PowerPoint presentation in Davos.
So we have this international chaos, or at least a fundamental restructuring of the international order. But this transactional mindset, it's bleeding into domestic issues too, isn't it? It's not just happening over there.
It never stays over there. That's the thing. The erosion of norms is a global contagion. If you start to erode the rule of law internationally, it inevitably erodes domestically. The philosophy is the same.
Let's look at Iran for a second. We have harrowing reports from Dropsite News, specifically an interview with the photographer Kaveh Rustamkhani. There has been immense bloodshed in the streets.
Thousands killed. Total internet blackouts. It's a media black hole.
And the narrative is messy. The protests, they started over currency devaluation, real economic pain.
Yep.
But you've noted that these legitimate protests may have been hijacked.
Well, it fits the pattern of what some analysts are calling the Serbianization of Iran. The goal from outside actors may not be clean regime change anymore. It might just be about fracturing the state, weakening it from within, breaking it into pieces so it can't project power in the region. And you have external actors, the Trump administration, Israel, various monarchist groups, pouring gasoline on that fire to ensure the state breaks.
And right here in the U.S., the political tension is just as high. We had Jack Smith testifying before Congress today about the investigation into the 2020 election subversion.
And the response from the White House was very telling.
Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, posted on social media that the entire justice system is rigged. And Elon Musk, who seems to be everywhere these days, from advising on Gaza reconstruction to weighing in on U.S. politics, he seconded it almost instantly.
And this is the connective tissue I'm talking about. You have a domestic disregard for the rule of law, calling the entire justice system rigged from inside the White House, running in perfect parallel to the international disregard for national sovereignty.
You mean like the reports about ICE breaking into homes without warrants?
Exactly. The writer Heather Cox Richardson reported on that secret memo that apparently allows ICE to bypass judicial warrants. If you don't respect the sovereignty of a private home in America, Why would you respect the sovereignty of Denmark? If you don't respect the borders established by the Westphalian system, why would you respect the boundaries laid out in the Constitution? It all stems from the same philosophy. Power creates its own legitimacy. The rules are for the other guy.
So when we put all these pieces together, what does this all mean? We are staring at a completely different world map, both literally and figuratively.
It's the transactional era. The old maps, the old rule books, they just don't work anymore.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Gaza is an ethnic cleansing operation disguised as a real estate development. Dystopian Dubai is only possible if you first remove the people who live there. It's the ultimate transaction. People for property.
So the takeaway from today is that peace is no longer a state of being.
No. In 2026, peace is a product. It's a luxury good. You buy it from the chairman of the board, and if you can't afford the subscription fee, good luck to you.
That is a heavy realization to end on. Peace is a product.
It is the reality we have to navigate now. It's the world we live in.
Well, on that note, we are going to have to wrap this up, but I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over for the rest of the week. The question isn't just about Greenland or Gaza. The question for all of us is, if sovereignty now costs $1 billion, who gets sold next?
That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
If you found this analysis valuable, hit the plus or follow button on your podcast app and give us a like. Subscribe to the Hot News channel for more deep dives. Until we meet again. Goodbye.